From the moment a child is born, they are shaped not only by their environment, but by invisible scripts handed down by generations. These scripts come in the form of cultural expectations, gender roles, and unspoken rules that dictate how a boy should behave and how a girl should respond. In many societies around the world, the conditioning begins early. Boys are taught to be strong, assertive, dominant, and emotionally distant, while girls are encouraged to be patient, nurturing, compliant, and emotionally expressive. This cultural blueprint is not always passed on intentionally, but through daily interactions, casual comments, media portrayals, religious narratives, and familial behaviors. It is quiet, insidious, and deeply powerful. When a boy cries, he may hear, "Stop crying, be a man," while a girl crying is comforted. When a boy shows anger, he is told, "At least he's strong willed." But when a girl shows anger, she's called a dramatic or a difficult. These seemingly harmless comments begin to shape how individuals view themselves and others. Over time, boys grow up believing that emotions are a sign of weakness, especially empathy, vulnerability, and sensitivity, traits often associated with femininity and therefore devalued in patriarchal cultures. Meanwhile, girls are taught to absorb discomfort, make peace, stay quiet for the sake of harmony, and adjust to the world around them. This is where the imbalance begins, not in adulthood, not in marriage, not in conflict, but in childhood, at the foundation of identity formation. Boys are trained to lead but rarely to listen, to chase success but not to build emotional intelligence, to win even in love but not to understand partnership. This conditioning primes some men to believe they are entitled to control, to obedience, and to loyalty without accountability. It also primes them to dehumanize the emotional experience of women, to disregard feelings, to dismiss pain, and to justify harmful actions under the veil of being a man. In cultures where male dominance is celebrated or unchallenged, this dynamic becomes even more dangerous. The message is clear. Men are leaders by default, and women are followers by design. Boys are encouraged to speak up. Girls are told not to talk back. Boys are praised for independence. Girls are praised for sacrifice. These societal norms are not just outdated, they are damaging. They create a world where imbalance becomes invisible and disrespect is disguised as tradition. This conditioning also leads to the minimization of women's experiences. When a woman speaks up about being hurt, the response often isn't support, it's suspicion, blame, or silence. Maybe she provoked him, maybe she's exaggerating, or maybe she deserved it. These thoughts don't come from nowhere. They come from generations of normalized sexism, where the comfort of men is prioritized over the safety of women. And when men hurt women, emotionally, mentally, or physically, and feel no remorse, we must ask, what have they been taught about empathy, about accountability, about consequences? In many cases, they've been taught none of it. Instead, they've been raised to believe that strength is domination and that winning means never admitting you're wrong. They've been taught that emotions are feminine and therefore inferior. So when they hurt someone, they don't see it as harm, they see it as control. When they walk away without care, it's not because they are inherently heartless. It's because their capacity to care has been suppressed, dismissed, or never developed. The tragedy of cultural conditioning is that it doesn't just harm women. It also robs men of their full humanity. It boxes them into a version of masculinity that disconnects them from compassion, introspection, and emotional. And while this doesn't excuse harmful behavior, it helps explain why it happens and why change must begin not just in homes, but in schools, communities, and conversations. Unlearning begins when we question what we were taught. Healing begins when we challenge what we've normalized. The foundation of any healthy relationship, whether romantic, platonic, or familial, is emotional understanding. But emotional understanding isn't something we're born with. It's something we're taught, guided through, and modeled by the people around us. Unfortunately, in many societies, emotional education is either neglected entirely or taught unequally between boys and girls. Boys, especially, are often not given the space to explore or express their emotions in a safe or constructive way. From a young age, they are praised for being stoic and criticized for being sensitive. The message becomes clear. Feelings are not for boys. Vulnerability is not masculine. Crying, processing pain, or speaking openly about emotions is a sign of weakness. something to be avoided, not embraced. As these boys grow into men, they carry this emotional illiteracy into adulthood. Without the words to describe what they feel, without the tools to process hurt or frustration, and without the space to explore their emotional world, many resort to the only responses they've been taught: anger, detachment, or withdrawal. Emotional pain that cannot be understood or expressed doesn't disappear, it transforms. It becomes bitterness, defensiveness, cruelty, or numbness. When someone has never been taught how to express sadness, they may express it as rage. When someone cannot identify fear or shame within themselves, they may lash out to protect their ego. In relationships, this often manifests in destructive ways. Many men enter relationships carrying a deficit, not of love, but of emotional self awareness. They may care deeply, but they don't know how to show it. They may feel regret, but they don't know how to communicate it. So instead of apologizing, they deflect. Instead of listening, they shut down. Instead of supporting, they try to fix or control. And when things go wrong, they may blame their partner rather than looking inward. This isn't always a matter of unwillingness. It's often a matter of unfamiliarity. You cannot access what you've never been taught. You cannot speak the language of emotion if no one ever taught you the alphabet. This lack of emotional education doesn't only affect romantic relationships, it affects friendships, parenting, leadership, and self worth. Men who cannot process their own emotions struggle to validate the emotions of others. So when a woman expresses sadness or anger, instead of empathy, they may respond with frustration. Instead of understanding, they feel attacked. Instead of compassion, they offer silence or superiority. It's not that they don't care, it's that they don't know what to do with the discomfort that emotion brings. And rather than confronting that discomfort, many push it away, shut it down, or dismiss it entirely. What makes this issue even more complex is that our society often rewards emotionally disconnected behavior in men. In professional spaces, stoicism is seen as leadership. In families, distance is seen as authority. In relationships, control is mistaken for strength. This conditioning reinforces the idea that being emotionally aware is optional rather than essential. As a result, the cycle continues. Boys become men who never learned to feel, and those men become fathers who cannot teach their sons what they never understood themselves. The damage caused by emotional ignorance can be subtle or severe. Sometimes it's the inability to comfort a crying partner. Sometimes it's dismissing a loved one's pain as a drama. And sometimes it escalates into manipulation, verbal abuse, or even physical violence because unprocessed emotion, especially in a person taught to suppress it, can become dangerous. But it's not just dangerous to others, it's damaging to the individual too. Repressing emotion doesn't make it disappear. It builds a wall between a person and their own heart. It creates loneliness, confusion, and internal chaos masked by external control. This is why emotional education is not a luxury. It's a necessity. It should be part of our conversations at home, taught in our classrooms, shown in our media, then practiced in our daily lives. Emotional intelligence is not something you magically acquire in adulthood. It's something that must be nurtured, practiced, and encouraged over time. Men deserve that opportunity, not just for the sake of their partners, but for their own peace of mind and self-growth. And society has a responsibility to provide that opportunity. Without emotional education, many men will continue to hurt, not because they are inherently cruel, but because they are unequipped. And when people are unequipped, they often respond with avoidance, aggression, or apathy. Teaching boys and men to understand their emotions isn't about making them softer. It's about making them stronger in the ways that matter most. In empathy, communication, accountability, and love. Toxic masculinity is not an accusation against all men. It is a term used to describe a cultural framework that promotes harmful behaviors and beliefs about what it means to be a real man. It is a system that tells men they must always be dominant, emotionally distant, physically tough, and in control. It does not refer to masculinity itself, which can be healthy and positive. Rather, it points to a distorted version of masculinity that leaves no room for vulnerability, softness, or emotional expression. This rigid expectation shapes boys from an early age and continues to influence them as they grow into adulthood. The damage it causes is often invisible, but incredibly real, both for men themselves and for the people around them, especially women. Boys are often taught that showing emotion is a liability. If they cry, they're told to aman up. If they express fear, they're mocked. If they ask for help, they're seen as weak. This conditioning teaches them that to be masculine means to be closed off, self-reliant to a fault, and emotionally detached. Over time, this creates men who do not know how to process emotions in a healthy way because they've been trained to see emotion as something shameful, something feminine, and therefore something to suppress. This internal suppression eventually becomes external aggression. When men are denied the space to feel and express their full emotional range, it doesn't make those emotions disappear. Instead, they fester, transform, and reappear as anger, defensiveness, control, or emotional unavailability. Toxic masculinity allows and often encourages this behavior by rewarding aggression and dominance while mocking empathy and compassion. In relationships, this can translate into power struggles, manipulation, emotional neglect, and in some cases, abuse. A man taught that control is a sign of strength may attempt to control his partner, not out of love, but out of fear of losing dominance. A man taught that vulnerability is weakness may never open up emotionally, leaving his partner feeling disconnected and invisible. One of the most dangerous elements of toxic masculinity is that it doesn't just shape how men see themselves, it shapes how they view women. If a man is taught that his worth is measured by power and control, he may see others, especially women, as tools for validation or as obstacles to overcome. In this framework, women are not equals, but supporting characters in a narrative centered on male dominance. This mindset makes it easier to dismiss a woman's voice, ignore her boundaries, or minimize her pain. It fosters a culture where harming a woman, emotionally or otherwise, can be excused, rationalized, or completely ignored. The media and entertainment industry have long reinforced this toxic ideal. Films, television shows, and music often glorify the emotionally unavailable, hyper-aggressive male hero who wins at all costs, including at the expense of others' feelings. Rarely are gentle, emotionally aware men celebrated with the same enthusiasm. In many stories, the man who shows sensitivity is ridiculed, sidelined, or seen as less desirable. These messages are absorbed by young boys who are constantly looking for examples of who they're supposed to be. Toxic masculinity doesn't just harm women, it deeply wounds men as well. It creates isolation, shame, and internal conflict. Many men suffer in silence, unable to ask for help when they're struggling with depression, anxiety, or trauma, because doing so would violate the false ideals of strength that they were raised to uphold. Mental health issues go undiagnosed, emotional needs go unmet. The pressure to perform masculinity becomes a heavy burden that many carry without even realizing it. And when this burden becomes too much to bear, it can explode outward, causing harm to the people closest to them. What makes toxic masculinity particularly difficult to dismantle is that it's often invisible to those who are trapped in it. It is so normalized in many cultures that it becomes the default mode of being. Men may not realize that their behavior is harmful, not because they don't care, but because they've been told their entire lives that this is how they're supposed to act. It takes conscious unlearning to break free from these patterns. It takes courage to reject the version of masculinity that demands emotional silence, and instead choose one rooted in empathy, accountability, and connection. The goal is not to strip men of their masculinity, but to expand it, to redefine strength as the ability to express emotion, communicate with honesty, and treat others with respect. To teach that leadership is not control, but compassion. That real confidence is not loud dominance, but quiet integrity. By confronting toxic masculinity, we open the door to a more emotionally healthy world. One where men are free to feel and women are free to be safe. One of the most damaging forces in society is not just abuse itself, but the normalization of abuse when harmful behavior becomes so common, so woven into everyday life, that it stops being seen as harmful at all. This normalization does not begin in adulthood. And it is shaped by childhood experiences, cultural beliefs, media messages, and generational silence. People grow up hearing phrases like a boys will be boyser when a boy pulls a girl's hair or insults her feelings. What starts as excused misbehavior in childhood can escalate, over time, into emotional manipulation, verbal degradation, or physical violence. And because these early signs were minimized, the most serious harm that follows is often ignored or misunderstood. When society fails to take abuse seriously, it sends a dangerous message that some pain is acceptable, that certain people, especially women, should expect to endure mistreatment in relationships as part of their role. In many cultures, women are subtly or overtly taught to tolerate disrespect, to prioritize harmony over justice, and to forgive endlessly in the name of love or tradition. They are told that if they are hurt, they should try harder, love more, be quieter, adjust themselves. Meanwhile, men who harm are rarely taught to reflect, apologize, or change. Instead, they are often protected, excused, or even praised for their passion, assertiveness, or dominance. This dynamic becomes a cycle that feeds itself. A man raises his voice during an argument and no one calls it out. A boyfriend controls who his partner talks to, and it's seen as jealousy or protectiveness. A husband ignores his wife's emotional needs, and it's dismissed as normal behavior. Just how men are. These patterns create an environment where abuse is not only tolerated, but disguised as love, concern, or personality. The woman being hurt begins to question her reality. She may wonder if she's overreacting or being too sensitive. When the world around her refuses to acknowledge the harm, it becomes easier to believe that maybe there is no harm at all. Media plays a powerful role in reinforcing this cycle. Movies and television often romanticize toxic relationships, showing men who are emotionally cold, controlling, or aggressive as desirable or bad boys who just need the right woman to change them. These stories suggest that love is about enduring pain until it turns into devotion. They rarely show the real consequences of toxic behavior, how it erodes self-worth, breeds fear, and silences individuality. By glamorizing dysfunctional dynamics, media teaches young viewers to see abuse not as a red flag, but as passion. In families, normalization often shows up through silence. A mother stays with an abusive partner and tells her children not to talk about what happens at home. A daughter watches her father disrespect her mother, and no one intervenes. A son learns that yelling or manipulation gets him what he wants, and no one corrects. These moments send a lasting message. Abuse is part of life, and love means staying anyway. Children raised in these environments may either become future victims or future abusers, not because they are destined to repeat the cycle, but because they've been taught it is normal. Religious or cultural narratives can also contribute to normalization. In some communities, women are told that their role is to be submissive, obedient, and forgiving no matter the circumstance. Men are told that leadership means authority and that questioning their behavior is disrespectful. When abuse is framed as a test of faith, a family duty, or a private matter not to be discussed, it becomes even harder to challenge. Women are silenced not just by fear, but by shame, and men are emboldened by the lack of accountability. Even when women do speak out, they are often met with disbelief or blame. People ask her, why didn't she leave? Instead of, why did he hurt her? The focus shifts from the abuser to the victim, placing responsibility for the abuse on the person experiencing it. This response discourages others from speaking up. It teaches women that their truth will not be accepted and that silence is safer than honesty. The normalization of abuse is not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, hidden in jokes, passed off as tradition, or embedded in expectations. But its effects are loud. It creates generations of emotionally wounded people. It keeps men from evolving and women from healing, and until it is confronted directly. At home, in schools, in media, in relationships, it will continue to shape how people treat each other, how they see themselves, and what they accept as love. One of the most insidious forces that allows harm to persist in relationships, especially harm directed from men toward women, is not just the actions of the one doing the hurting, but the silence of everyone around them. Societal silence and complicity are what turn individual acts of disrespect or abuse into cultural patterns. When people see a woman being mistreated and look away, when institutions ignore complaints, when families ask women to stay quiet for the sake of peace, and when communities defend the aggressor more than the victim, they're not just being passive. They're contributing to the harm. Silence is not neutral. It sends a message. When a man speaks cruelly to his partner in public and no one speaks up, he learns that his behavior is acceptable. When a woman cries out for help and is met with disbelief or shame, she learns that her pain does not matter. Over time, this silence becomes a shield that protects harmful behavior and isolates those experiencing it. People are often afraid to interfere in what they see as private matters, but this very hesitation becomes the reason those private matters turn into lifelong wounds. Families play a major role in this cycle. Often, when a daughter or sister comes forward to speak about how she's being hurt by her partner, the first response she receives isn't support, it's doubt or discomfort. Parents may say, every couple fights, or maybe you're misunderstanding him, or worse, you made your bed, now lie in it. These responses aren't always cruel in intention, but they are devastating in impact. They invalidate the woman's voice, and worse, they reinforce the idea that her safety and happiness are less important than the appearance of a stable relationship. Even friends, co-workers, and bystanders, people who may care deeply, sometimes fall silent out of fear, awkwardness, or the belief that it's not their place to speak. But every time someone chooses to stay quiet, they reinforce the status quo. Men who hurt women often do so, knowing that no one around them will hold them accountable. This complicity allows harmful behavior to thrive in broad daylight under the surface of normalcy. The silence is even louder in systems and institutions. In many workplaces, women report harassment or mistreatment only to be met with delays, bureaucracy, or retaliation. In some legal systems, the burden of proof falls unfairly on the victim, and the accused is shielded by reputation, money, or influence. In religious or traditional spaces, women are often asked to forgive and forget, to protect the family name, or to remain obedient for the sake of virtue. These are not just small failures, they are systemic betrayals. They tell women that even when they speak up, the world will not listen. And when the world does not listen, the cycle of silence deepens. Social media has created a new space where voices can be heard. But even there, societal silence transforms into something more aggressive: mockery, victim blaming, and harassment. When a woman shares her story online, people question her motives, her credibility, or her character. They ask what she wore, why she stayed, what she said. This is not just silence. It's resistance against truth. It's the digital version of complicity. And it discourages countless others from ever coming forward. There's also the role that men themselves play, not just as individuals, but as peers. When men witness harmful behavior in other men and say nothing, they become part of the problem. When they laugh at a sexist joke, ignore a friend's controlling behavior toward his partner, or justify their own past actions as are not that bad, they are feeding a culture of impunity. Accountability must start within male circles too, because silence among men is often the loudest form of approval. The hard truth is, society is not just made up of abusers and victims, it's also made up of silent witnesses, institutions that delay justice, cultures that shame women, and traditions that prioritize image over integrity. Until that silence is broken, nothing changes. Awareness alone is not enough. There has to be intervention, confrontation, and collective responsibility. People must speak, even when it's uncomfortable. Institutions must protect, even when it's inconvenient. Communities must believe, support, and act, even when it disrupts the norm. Because silence is not just the absence of sound, it is the presence of permission. And when a society remains silent in the face of harm, it is choosing to side with the one causing it. At the core of many harmful relationships lies an unspoken but deeply felt imbalance of power. One, emotional illiteracy is one of the most overlooked but powerful contributors to why many men hurt women and seem indifferent to the pain they cause. Emotional illiteracy does not mean a person lacks emotions. It means they lack the tools to understand, process, express, and regulate them in a healthy way. Many boys grow up in environments where emotions are treated as threats rather than signals, especially emotions like sadness, fear, vulnerability, or regret. They are taught that strength lies in suppression, that silence is maturity, and that controlling others is more acceptable than expressing what's going on inside themselves. Over time, this emotional repression becomes a barrier between their inner world and the people who care about them. When boys are constantly told to man up, stop crying, or to get over it, they begin to associate emotions with shame. They learn to wear a mask, and behind that mask, their emotional landscape becomes unfamiliar even to themselves. As they grow into men, many of them are emotionally unprepared for real intimacy, not because they are inherently cruel or careless, but because they were never taught how to connect deeply. They don't know how to name what they feel, let alone communicate it. When faced with conflict, instead of reflecting or discussing their feelings, they resort to defensiveness, withdrawal, or aggression because these are the only responses they've practiced. This emotional disconnect creates enormous problems in relationships. A partner who lacks emotional literacy is unable to understand the impact of his words, recognize when he's causing harm, or show genuine empathy. He may interpret a woman's emotional expression as an attack instead of a cry for understanding. He might respond with silence, mockery, or irritation because he feels overwhelmed by something he never learned how to navigate. As a result, the woman feels unheard, invalidated, and alone while he continues to believe that he's doing nothing wrong because in his mind, expressing emotion is weakness and dismissing it is strength. Emotional illiteracy also affects accountability. When a man doesn't understand the emotional weight of his actions, he struggles to apologize sincerely. He may say, "I'm sorry," out of obligation, not because he truly comprehends the pain he caused. He may blame others for his outburst or minimize the harm by saying things like, "Oh, too sensitive," or "it wasn't that serious." These reactions don't come from a place of conscious cruelty, but from a genuine inability to step outside of himself and feel what someone else is feeling. Without emotional literacy, compassion becomes performative, not authentic. This lack of emotional development often gets mistaken for masculinity. Society has long equated manhood with stoicism, control, and emotional detachment. From action heroes on screen to role models in real life, the ideal man is often portrayed as someone who doesn't cry, doesn't explain himself, and doesn't let feelings get in the way. These stereotypes are not only unrealistic, they are deeply damaging. They raise generations of men who are emotionally stunted, yet socially rewarded for being distant. Meanwhile, women are expected to be the emotional caretakers in relationships, constantly translating, absorbing, and forgiving. The result is emotional labor that becomes exhausting and one-sided. Women are often the ones trying to bridge the emotional gap, asking questions, initiating difficult conversations, soothing tension, and carrying the emotional weight of the relationship. When that labor is met with silence, dismissal, or defensiveness, it becomes a form of emotional abandonment. Over time, the woman feels more like a mother than a partner, responsible for the emotional development of a grown man who refuses to meet her halfway. That dynamic is not only unsustainable, it's unfair. And yet, emotional illiteracy is rarely challenged in men the way it should be. Instead of being encouraged to grow emotionally, men are often comforted in their discomfort. Their inability to communicate is excused. Their emotional distance is accepted. Their emotional outbursts are rationalized as just how men are. This keeps them from evolving, and it keeps women trapped in relationships where their emotional needs are consistently unmet. The truth is, emotional intelligence can be learned. It is not something men lack because they're men. It's something many lack because they were never taught. Was true, never taught. It takes time, humility, and effort to learn how to identify feelings, speak from the heart, listen without defensiveness, and care without control. But it is a necessary step for any healthy relationship. Until more men are willing to do that work, and until society demands it of them, women will continue to be the ones suffering the consequences of emotional illiteracy masked as masculinity. Person holding control, the other adjusting, shrinking, and sacrificing to keep peace. When men hurt women and seem not to care, the root often isn't simply cruelty or apathy. It is about power, how it's gained, how it's maintained, and how it's used to dominate rather than connect. This imbalance is not always loud or obvious. It can exist in quiet dismissals, subtle manipulations, and everyday decisions that slowly strip someone of their agency. And while not all men seek to control intentionally, many have been socialized to believe that control equals love, authority, or masculinity. In many relationships, power dynamics are woven into daily interactions. Who makes the decisions, who gets hurt, whose feelings matter, and who ends up apologizing even when they did nothing wrong. When these patterns go unaddressed, they become normalized. The person in control may not even recognize the imbalance because it benefits them. Meanwhile, the person without power begins to question themselves constantly. Am I being too emotional? Am I asking for too much? Is it my fault? These questions aren't born out of confusion, but from repeated experiences of being dismissed or minimized. Control doesn't always look like shouting or violence. Often, it's subtle. It's the boyfriend who checks his partner's phone and calls it love. The husband who slowly isolates his wife from her friends and justifies it as wanting more time together. The man who interrupts, talks over, or decides for the woman, always under the banner of he know what's best. These behaviors, though less traumatic than physical aggression, are deeply damaging because they chip away at a person's independence, identity, and voice. One of the reasons this imbalance persists is because society often frames male dominance as normal. In many households, men are raised to be the head of the family, while women are expected to follow. In media, the male lead takes charge, makes the calls, and rarely asks for consent. In workplaces, men are overrepresented in leadership and often rewarded for assertive behavior, while women are seen as difficult or emotional for the same trait. These patterns teach men that control is not just acceptable, it's expected. What complicates things further is that many women are conditioned to accommodate this control without even realizing it. They are taught to keep the peace, to compromise for the sake of the relationship, to bend so the bond won't break. They are praised for being understanding, patient, and selfless, even when that means sacrificing their own needs. Over time, this creates a dynamic where one partner is constantly shrinking and the other continues to expand. The imbalance deepens, and the woman begins to lose herself in the effort to keep love alive. Control also shows up in financial decisions. In many cases, men use money as a tool of power, dictating how it's spent, withholding it as punishment, or using their financial status to silence or trap their partner. A woman who is financially dependent often feels she cannot leave even if she wants to. This isn't love. It's control masked as provision. When someone uses what they give to justify what they take away, the relationship is no longer based on equality. It's based on dominance and dependency. Even in conflict, the power imbalance is clear. When a man hurts a woman and refuses to acknowledge her pain, he is asserting power over her emotions. He decides which feelings are valid and which are not. He becomes the judge, the jury, and sometimes the executioner of the relationship's emotional life. If he apologizes, it may be to avoid consequences, not out of true understanding. If he refuses to apologize, he sends the message that her experience doesn't matter. This refusal to take accountability is not a flaw in communication. It's a function of power. What's essential to understand is that real love cannot exist where power is imbalanced. Love requires mutual respect, mutual listening, and mutual freedom. When one person constantly yields, sacrifices, or suffers in silence, it is not love, it is survival. And survival should never be the standard in a relationship. Power imbalance doesn't always begin with bad intentions. Sometimes it begins with ignorance, with inherited beliefs, or with emotional insecurity masked as control. But the result is the same: one partner holding too much control while the other slowly disappears. Until that imbalance is acknowledged and addressed, no relationship can be truly healthy, honest, or whole.